Okay, good evening. I want to welcome you to the discussion that we started last time of the respiratory system. So today we're going to continue where we stopped. So let's start from the pharynx. So the pharynx is one of the organs which is involved in the respiratory system. So the pharynx is a tube measuring about 12 to 14 centimeters long that extends from the base of the skull to the level of the sixth cervical vertebrae. It lies behind the nose, mouth, and larynx, and is wider at its upper end. So the pharynx is quite wider at its upper end. When we look at the structures which are associated with the pharynx, superiorly, we have the inferior surface of the base of the skull, taken of the upper part. Then inferiorly, that is the lower part, it is continuous with the esophagus. Then anteriorly, in front, is associated with the wall which is incomplete because of the openings into the nose, mouth, and the larynx. So in front of the larynx, there is the nose, mouth, and the larynx. Then posteriorly at the back, with areolar tissue, involuntary muscle, and the bodies of the first six cervical vertebrae. When you look at the bones of the cervical vertebrae, which is about 7. Now the first 6, they're the ones which are associated with the pharynx posteriorly. For descriptive purposes, the pharynx is divided into 3 parts. If you want to describe the pharynx, you have to mention it, or you have to describe it in 3 parts. That is the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. For descriptive purposes, the pharynx is described in those 3 areas: nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. Let us look at the nasopharynx. The nasal part of the pharynx is behind the nose, above the level of the soft pharynx. The first presentation that we had, we saw where the soft pharynx is. We are saying behind the nose, above the level of the soft pharynx, that's where you find the nasopharynx. The lateral walls are 2 openings of the auditory tubes, one leading to each middle ear. On the posterior wall, there are the pharyngeal dorsals or adenoids, consisting of lymphoid tissue. They are most prominent in children up to approximately 7 years of age. Thereafter, they gradually atrophy. So the nasopharynx, it has 2 openings of the auditory nerve or tubes, which they lead into the middle ear. Then we've also said that it is also associated with the lymphoid tissue. And this lymphoid tissue is very important because it guards the pharynx against infections. And these are the lymphoid which undergoes inflammation when someone has infection on the pharynx, seeing the pharynx, the soft pharynx becoming reddish in color because of the infection. That's what makes people present with the tonsils. It is the involvement of the soft pharynx which undergoes inflammation due to the presence of infections. That was nasopharynx. Now let us look at oropharynx. The oral part of the pharynx lies behind the mouth, extending from below the level of the soft pharynx to the level of the upper part of the body of the third cervical vertebrae. So the other one we talked up to the sixth cervical vertebrae, but this one it is going up to the level of the third cervical vertebrae where we get the description of oropharynx. The lateral walls of the pharynx blend with the soft pharynx to form two folds on each side. So the walls of the pharynx comes together with the soft pharynx to form the two thirds of each side. Between each pair of folds, there is a collection of lymphoid tissue called the palatine tonsils. So these palatine tonsils as well guards the oropharynx against infection. So any infection that may be present in the oropharynx, the palatine tonsils will be framed. That immune system can be stimulated to offer defense mechanism. During swallowing, the nasal and oropharynx are separated by the soft pharynx and the uvula. So these they play a very important role when someone is swallowing. The laryngopharynx. The laryngeal part of the pharynx extends from the oropharynx above and continues to the esophagus below. That is from the level of the third to the sixth cervical vertebrae. So this is a continuation from the oropharynx. It is a continuation from the oropharynx, which is from the third up to the sixth cervical vertebrae. Let us look at the structure. The pharynx is composed of three layers of tissue. The first one is mucous membrane lining. Of the three, the first one is the mucous membrane lining. The mucosa varies slightly in different parts. In the nasopharynx, it is continuous to the lining of the nose and consists of ciliated columnar epithelium. It consists of ciliated columnar epithelium. So we are saying structurally the pharynx has various mucous membrane because of the different roles that it plays. So when we are talking of the nasopharynx, it is continuous with the ciliated columnar epithelium. The ciliated columnar epithelium helps in getting rid of dust particles that might have entered the nose. That might have entered the nose. So the ciliated columnar epithelium traps this dust and pushes over the esophagus where it is coughed, where it is swallowed and coughed out, so that the dust doesn't cause any harm to the body. We need the oropharynx. In the oropharynx and the laryngopharynx, it is formed by tough stratified squamous epithelium. So you can say that in the oropharynx and in the laryngopharynx, it is formed by tough stratified epithelium, which is continuous with the lining of the mouth and the esophagus. So you can see that we have two different membranes that are continuous, which are lining the pharynx. The second one, the second of the three layers is the fibrous tissue. The fibrous tissue. This forms the intermediate layer. It is thick in the nasopharynx where there is little muscle, and it becomes thinner towards the lower end where the muscle layer is thick. So the fibrous forms the middle layer, and it is quite it is thick because there is little muscle, and where we have a lot of muscle, this layer becomes thick as well. The third one is muscle tissue. This consists of several involuntary constrictor muscles that play an important part in the mechanism of swallowing or deglutition, which in the pharynx it is not under voluntary control. The upper end of the esophagus is closed by the lower constrictor muscle except during swallowing. So this muscle tissue helps in the process of swallowing, in the mechanism of swallowing, so that food does not go into the trachea. So just look at blood and nerve supply. Blood is supplied to the pharynx by several branches of facial arteries. The nervous return, the venous return is into the facial and the internal jugular veins. So when we talk of blood supply and nerve supply to the pharynx, it is done through the branches of the facial arteries, the arteries which are coming from the face. The arteries which are coming from the face plays a very important role as far as blood and nerve supply is concerned. Then under venous return as well, we are saying it is done by the facial and internal jugular veins. The nerve supply is from the pharyngeal bronchus formed by parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves. So the pharynx is supplied both by parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves through pharyngeal bronchus. Let us look at parasympathetic supply. It's by the vagus and the glossopharyngeal nerves. The parasympathetic supply of the nerves to the pharynx is done by the vagus and glossopharyngeal nerves. Then sympathetic supply is by nerves from the superior cervical ganglia. It's done by superior cervical ganglia. So you need to pay attention. You need to pay attention here. Under nerve supply, we've mentioned about two components, that is parasympathetic, which is done by the vagus as well as the glossopharyngeal nerves. In under sympathetic nerve supply, it is done by the superior cervical ganglia. Functions. Pharynx. 1. It functions for passageway for air and food. So the pharynx functions in two ways. One, for air as well as food. The pharynx is an organ involved in both the respiratory and the digestive system. Air passes through the nasal and oral parts, and food through the oral and the laryngeal parts. So this is explaining as to why it is able to play a role on both air and food. Air and the food. So air is through the nasal and oral parts, breathing through the mouth and through the nostrils, and food through the oral and the laryngeal parts. 2. Warming and humidifying. By the same methods in the nose, the air is further warmed and moistened. It passes through the pharynx. So one of the functions that it also does, apart from being the passage of food and air, it also humidifies or warms the air that passes through the pharynx. The third function is taste. There are olfactory nerve endings of the sense of taste in the epithelium of the oral and the pharyngeal parts. So it can also be used for tasting because of the nerve endings which are found in the oral and the pharyngeal parts of the pharynx. The other function that it plays is hearing. The auditory tube extending from the nasal part to each middle ear allows air to enter the middle ear. The auditory tube extending from the nasal part to each middle ear allows air to enter the middle ear. So hearing is done through by allowing air to enter through the middle ear. Satisfactory hearing depends on the presence of air atmospheric pressure on each side of the tympanic membrane, that is the eardrum. So we're saying for successful hearing to occur, there should be enough atmospheric air pressure with that of the tympanic membrane, that is the eardrum. The other function of the pharynx is protection. The other function of the pharynx is protection. The lymphatic tissue of the larynx and the laryngeal mucus produce antibodies in response to antigen, e.g., microbes. The tonsils are larger in children and tend to atrophy in adults. So under protection, we're talking of any infection that may come on the tonsils, the pharynx, especially the soft pharynx that I mentioned earlier on. It has to bring about inflammation, meaning there are presence of microorganisms that might have attacked the soft pharynx, and in response to that, produce the immune defensive cells. Inflammation has to start so that protection can be done to prevent damage. The other function of the pharynx is speech. The pharynx functions in speech by acting as a resonating chamber for the sounds ascending from the larynx. It helps together with the sinuses to give the voices individual characteristics. So the difference of various voices that we have, it is largely attributed by the pharynx. The pharynx makes an individual to have a tone of his or her own. Let us look at the larynx. The larynx or voice box extends from the root of the tongue and the hyoid bone to the trachea. It lies in the front of the laryngopharynx at the level of the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth cervical vertebrae. Until puberty, there is little difference in the size of larynx between the sexes. Thereafter, it grows larger in the male, which explains the prominence of the Adam's apple and generally deep voices. So under position of the larynx, we're saying it extends from the root of the tongue and the hyoid bone to the trachea. So it also lies at the level of the third, fourth, and sixth cervical vertebrae. Then there is no actual difference between the males and females in terms of sizes of this larynx. However, it grows larger in male. And this is the reason why men, they normally present with a bigger voice. Structures associated with the larynx: superiorly on top, the hyoid bone and the root of the tongue. Inferiorly on the lower part, it is continuous with the trachea. Anteriorly in front, the muscles attached to the hyoid bone and the muscles of the neck. Posteriorly on the back, the laryngopharynx and 30 to 60 cervical vertebrae. These are the structures that are associated with the larynx. Then the lateral, the sideways, with the lobes of the hyoid of the thyroid gland. The lobes of the thyroid gland, they make the structures lateral, which are associated with the larynx. Structure of the larynx. Let us look at cartridges. The larynx is composed of several irregular shaped cartridges attached to each other by ligaments and membrane. The many cartridges are, we have the thyroid cartridge made of hyaline cartridge. So the many cartridges that makes up the larynx of the thyroid cartridge made up of hyaline cartridge. Then also have cricoid cartridge made up of hyaline cartridge as well. Then also have arytenoid cartridges made up of hyaline cartridges. Then also epiglottis made of elastic fibrocartridge. Epiglottis made up of elastic fibrocartridge. The thyroid cartridge. This is the most prominent and consists of two flat pieces, hyaline cartridge or lamina fused interiorly forming the laryngeal prominence or Adam's apple. So the thyroid cartridge is the one that forms the voice box or Adam's apple. Immediately above the laryngeal prominence, the lamina are separated, forming a V-shaped notch known as the hyoid notch. The thyroid cartridge is incomplete posteriorly, and the posterior border of each lamina is extended to form two processes called the superior and the inferior cornea. The superior and inferior cornea. So under Adam apple, the V-shaped notch, which is the hyoid notch, the thyroid notch, is the one that gives the good structure, the Adam's apple or the voice box. The upper part of the thyroid cartridge is lined with stratified squamous epithelium like the larynx, and the lower part with the ciliated columnar epithelium like the trachea, so that it is able to trap the dust that can cause upper respiratory tract infections. There are many muscles attached to its outer surfaces, so there are many thousands of muscles that are attached to the outer surface. The cricoid cartridge. The cricoid cartridge lies below the thyroid cartridge, and it is also composed of hyaline cartridge. It is shaped like a signet ring, completely encircling the larynx with the narrow part anteriorly and the broad part posteriorly. So this is another cartridge link that forms the structures of the larynx, and it is also made of the hyaline cartridge. The broad posterior part articulates with the arytenoid cartridges. Above and with the inferior cornea of the thyroid cartridge below. It is lined with ciliated columnar epithelium, and there are muscles and the ligaments attached to its outer surfaces. The lower border of the cricoid cartridge makes the end of the upper respiratory tract. So this is very important because it demarcates the upper respiratory tract. It demarcates the upper respiratory tract. So Here is the cricoid cartilage. You can see the narrow anterior aspect. You can see the narrow anterior aspect of the area for articulation with the thyroid cartilage. Then you have the broader posterior aspect showing some movements. Then area for articulation with the athenoid cartilage where some movements actually takes place. The athenoid cartilage. These are two lovely pyramid-shaped hyaline cartridges situated on top of the broad part of the cricoid cartilage, forming part of the posterior wall of the larynx. They give attachment to the vocal cords and muscles and align with serrated columnar epithelium. So the athenoid cartridges, they are very important. They are pyramid-shaped hyaline. They give attachment to the vocal cords and the muscles, which are aligned with the serrated columnar epithelium. The epiglottis, this is leaf-shaped fibroblastic cartilage attached to the inner surface of the anterior wall of the thyroid cartilage immediately below the thyroid notch. It rises obliquely upwards behind the tongue and the body of the hyoid bone. It's covered with stratified squamous epithelium. If the pharynx is linked to a box, then the epiglottis acts as the lid. It closes off the larynx during swallowing, protecting the lungs from accidental inhalation of foreign bodies. So this is very important because it protects the lungs from accidental inhalation of foreign objects. So we know that the lungs functions as respiratory organs, and anything that goes into the lungs apart from air, it is described as a foreign material. This is the reason why when you are swallowing, the larynx has to close the opening so that there is no food which can go to the trachea, so that we prevent choking. Ligaments and membranes. There are several ligaments that attach the cartilages to each other and to the hyoid bone. Blood is supplied to the larynx by the superior and inferior laryngeal arteries and drained by the thyroid veins, which join the internal circulation. Jugular vein. The parasympathetic nerve supply is from the superior laryngeal and recurrent laryngeal nerves, which are branches of the vagus nerve, and the sympathetic nerves are from the superior cervical ganglia, one on each side. These provide the motor nerve supply to the muscles of the larynx and sessile fibers to the lining membrane. So these were actually explained earlier on where I said you need to pay attention between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nerve supply to the pharynx. Interior of the larynx, the vocal cords are two pair folds of mucous membrane with cord-like free edges which extend from the inner wall of the thyroid prominence anteriorly to the athenoid cartilages posteriorly. When the muscles controlling the vocal cords are relaxed, the vocal cords open and the passageway for air coming up through the larynx is clear. The vocal cords are said to be abducted. They get wider when this happens. They get wider as this happens so that they allow more voice to enter in and give it when they get wider, more air is allowed to get in so that voice can be specified according to an individual. The pitch of the sound produced by vibrating the cords in this position is low. When the muscles controlling the cords contract, the vocal cords are stretched out tight across the larynx, they are said to be abducted. So the construction of the cords contributes in determining the voice because the vocal cords get stretched out tightly across the larynx. When the vocal cords are stretched to this extent and are vibrated by air passing through from the lungs, the sound produced is high pitched. The sound produced is high pitched, like I said. This give characteristics of the voice depending on how much air has passed through the vocal cords. The pitch of the voice is therefore determined by the tension applied to the vocal cords by the prominent sets of muscles, which when not in use, the vocal cords are abducted. Let us look at the functions of the larynx. So sound has the properties of pitch, volume, and the resonance. So we're saying the larynx functions for production of sound, of which sound is characterized with the low or high pitch volume. And this is what makes us, all of us, to be able to know each other. If you know that this is a small voice, it is either coming from Sumilanji. Then if you know that this is a big voice, then you know that it's coming from Gerard because of this function that which vocal cords plays in. Pitch of the voice depends upon the length and tightness of the cords. At puberty, the male vocal cords begin to grow longer, hence the lower pitch of adult male voice. So at this age, when men reaches puberty, it also explains as to why they tend to deepen their voices. Also speech. This occurs during expiration when the sounds produced by the vocal cords are manipulated by the tongue, cheeks, and the lips. So the speech that comes out from someone when he's speaking, it depends on the tongue, manipulation of the tongue and the cheeks and the lips. These three things, they contribute to how the speech is going to sound like. Protection of the lower respiratory tract. It also helps in protecting the lower respiratory tract, like I explained earlier on, that it is lined with ciliated or laminar epithelium. So dust that might have entered, it will be trapped, it will be swallowed and coughed out, so that we prevent lower respiratory tract infections. So this is the structure of the larynx, which you can see that there is hyoid bone, the epiglottis, the thyroid membrane, the thyroid cartilage, the arachnoid cartilage, the cricoid, the cricoarachnoid ligament, the cricoid cartilage, of broad posterior aspect of the trachea here. The same diagram on the other side of the trachea. Narrow arterial aspect, the cricoid cartilage, the cricothyroid ligament, the cricocervical membrane, the inferior cone of the thyroid cartilage. We also have the thyroid cartilage, the thyroid nose, the thyroid lamina, thyroid membrane, the superior cone of thyroid cartilage, and the hyoid bone. That is the epiglottis, which is being shown there. So this is the larynx viewed from behind, and larynx viewed from the front. So we have behind view and the front view. So this is the front view of the larynx, and this is the behind view of the larynx. So you can see that we have we have the vocal cords. These are the vocal cords. then the adenoid cartilage giving muscle attachments. Then we also have the trachea. As the trachea can see rings of cartridges being shown there, and this is the epiglottis. So this is the interior of the larynx viewed from the above. Interior of the larynx viewed from above. Let us look at the trachea now. Let us look at the trachea now. Position. The trachea or windpipe is a continuous of the larynx and extends downwards to about the level of the fifth thoracic vertebrae, where it divides or bifurcates at the carina into the right and left bronchi. The left and right bronchi. One bronchus going to each lung. It is approximately 10 to 11 centimeters long and lies mainly in the medium plane in front of the esophagus. That is just a description of the trachea. I'm sure at this point the trachea functions as a respiratory organ where air passes as it goes to the lungs. So structures associated with the trachea: superiorly the larynx, medially the right and left bronchi, anteriorly upper part we have the isthmus of the thyroid gland, then the lower part the arc of aorta and the sternum. Posteriorly the esophagus separates the trachea from the vertebral cord. Then laterally the lungs and the lobes of the thyroid gland. Structurally, the trachea is composed of 16 to 20 incomplete C-shaped rings of hyaluronic cartilage lying one above the other. So the C-shaped rings, they are the ones which we are describing as the rings of hyaluronic cartilages. The cartilages are complete. They are not complete, they are incomplete posterior. Connective tissue and involuntary muscles join the cartilages and form the posterior wall where they incomplete. The soft tissue posterior wall is in contact with the esophagus. There are 3 layers of tissues within clots, the cartilages of the trachea. So it also has 3 tissues that makes the trachea, and the first one is the outer layer. This consists of the fibrous and the elastic tissue, and it closes the cartilages. So the outer layer encloses the cartilages so that the outside of the trachea becomes strong, so that there is no air that can leak out of it. So you can see that that is the rumen of the trachea. You have the esophagus. This esophagus, that's where food passes. And this is for air. Then you can see that this is the trachea. This is the C-shaped cartilage rings which we described. It's that they are in form of C-shaped. The middle layer, this consists of cartilage and the bands of smooth muscles that wind round the trachea in a helical arrangement. There is some areolar tissue containing blood and lymph vessels and anatomic nerves. So the middle layer was saying it also consists of cartridges and bands of muscles which goes round the trachea to strengthen it. It also has alveolar tissue and some lymph vessels and autonomic nerves. All these they provide protection to the trachea. Protection to the trachea. We also have the inner lining. This consists of ciliated columnar epithelium containing mucus-secreting globulate cells, containing mucus-secreting globulate cells. So these mucus-secreting globulate cells, they secrete mucus so that there shouldn't be any time when the trachea, when the trachea becomes dry. The trachea becomes dry, it means all dust particles, they'll be just going until they infect the lungs. So these mucus secreting globules, they are always secreting mucus so that it is able to trap dust, it can be swallowed and coughed out so that we prevent infections to the lungs. Blood and nerve supply and also lymph drainage. The arterial blood supply, this is mainly by the inferior thyroid and the bronchial arteries, and the venous return is by the inferior thyroid veins into the brachiocephalic veins. So this makes the blood supply as well as the venous. So I was saying thyroid and the bronchial arteries, they provide the blood supply to the trachea, and venous is done by the inferior thyroid veins into the brachiocephalic veins. The nerve supply, this is by parasympathetic and sympathetic fibers. The parasympathetic supply is the recurrent laryngeal nerves and other branches of the vagus, whereas sympathetic supply is by nerves from the sympathetic ganglia. These are a repetition of what we've already discussed in the beginning. Lymph from the respiratory passes through lymph nodes situated around the trachea and in the carina, the area where it divides into two bronchi. The area where it divides into two bronchi. So you can see the thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage. The thyroid cartilages were the esophagus, which is behind there, the trachea, brachiocephalic artery. We have the right primary bronchus, you can see it there dividing itself. Then we have the left primary bronchus, you can see that side, and this is the aorta making some branches like left common carotid artery, also left subclavian artery, and the aorta itself, which is the bigger blood vessel. Let us look at functions of the trachea, support and patterns. The arrangement of cartilage and elastic tissue prevents kicking and obstruction of airway as the head and the neck moves. There shouldn't be any time. There shouldn't be no time for the trachea to start kinking. This is the reason why, if you look at the description of the trachea, it is made of the cartilage tissues, so that it is more adherent to the functions that it does. The other function is mucociliary excreta. The other function is mucociliary excreta. This is the synchronous and regular beating of the ciliary of the mucous membrane lining that wafts mucus with adherent particles upwards towards the larynx where it is swallowed or expectorated. This one I mentioned it. Mucociliary excreta We're talking of continuous secretion of mucus that keeps on trapping dust, which can be swallowed and coughed so that we prevent infections of the lungs. Also, cough reflex, nerve endings in the larynx, trachea, and bronchi are sensitive to irritation that generates nerve impulses which are conducted by the vagus nerve to the respiratory center in the brain stem. So we are saying it also functions for cough reflex. Apart from cough reflex, also warming, humidifying, and the filtering of air. This continues in the nose, although air is normally saturated and at body temperature when it reaches the trachea. Just like the nostrils does warming, even the trachea also does that, because the process of ciliate is able to filter out some dust particles so that the air that goes and reach the lungs, it is okay. So you can see some globular cells which we mentioned earlier on, which continuously keep on producing mucus so that it is able to trap the dust particles and any other foreign bodies which might have been held in the process of respiration. The bronchi and smaller air passages. The two primary bronchi are formed when the trachea divides, i.e., about the level of the fifth thoracic vertebrae. The light bronchus. This is wider, shorter, and more vertical than the left bronchus, and it is therefore more likely of the two to become obstructed by a held foreign body. It's approximately 2.5 centimeters long. So we are just explaining the comparison between the two. It is wider and it is short, and this explains as to why it can be obstructed easily. After entering the light ring at the helium, it divides into three branches, one to each lobe. Each branch then divides into numerous smaller branches. The left bronchus, this is about 5 centimeters long and it is narrower than the right. After entering the lung at the helium, it divides into two branches, one to each lobe. Each branch then divides into progressive smaller tubes within the lungs substances. So like I said, we're just trying to give some discrepancy between the two. The other one is short and wide, the other one is longer and narrow. So you can see this one is wider and short, but the other one is narrow and long. So you can see we have the trachea, primary bronchus, lobar bronchus, segmented bronchus, bronchus, the lobes, alveolar duct or alveolus, respiratory bronchioles. Then these are passages where gases exchange takes place. So this is also lower respiratory tract. This is also described as lower respiratory tract. Bronchial and bronchioles. The bronchi are composed of the same tissues as the trachea. They align with related columnar epithelium. The bronchi progressively subdivide into bronchioles, terminal bronchioles, respiratory bronchioles, alveolar ducts, and finally alveoli. Towards the distal end of the bronchiole, the cartridges become irregular in shape and are present at the bronchial level. These are just explaining some division branches that are made in relation to the bronchioles, which are formed from the main bronchi. In the absence of cartilage, the smooth muscle in the walls of the bronchioles becomes thicker and is responsive to outer nerve stimulation and irritation. Sedated columnar mucous membrane changes gradually to non-sedated cuboid-shaped cells in the distal bronchioles. So the sedated columnar epithelium that we mentioned, it lines the trachea. In the distal of this respiratory tract, we find cubicle-shaped cells in the distal of the bronchioles. Blood and nerve supply and lymph drainage. Just look at blood and nerve supply and lymph drainage. The arterial blood supply. They supply to the walls of the bronchi and smaller air passages is through branches of the right and left brachial arteries, and the venous return is mainly through the brachial veins. So the left and the right brachial arteries are the blood supplies, while as venous return is through the brachial veins. On the right side, they empty into the azygos vein, and on the left into the superior intercostal vein. The nerve supply is by parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves. The vagus nerves parasympathetic stimulates contraction of smooth muscle in the bronchial tree, causing bronchoconstriction, and sympathetic stimulation causing bronchial dilatation. So when there is a bronchial constriction, there is narrowing of the bronchioles. Again, when there is bronchial dilatation, the bronchioles or airway passages, they dilate. In bronchoconstriction, this is one of the special signs and symptoms which a patient normally has when they have bronchitis, where the bronchioles undergoes constriction. The lymphatic vessel and lymph nodes. Lymph is drained from the walls of the air passages in a network of lymph vessels. It passes through lymph nodes situated around the trachea and bronchial tree, then into the thoracic duct on the left side and right lymphatic duct on the other. Functions of air passages not involved in gases exchange, but control of air entry. So among them, the following functions continue as in the upper airways. Among the functions that it does, it includes warming and humidifying, support and patency, remove of particulate matter, cough reflex like we described earlier on, then respiratory bronchioles and alveoli structure. Lobules are the blind ends of respiratory tract distal to the terminal bronchioles, consisting of respiratory bronchioles, alveoli ducts, and alveoli, which are the tiny air sacs. So the alveoli are surrounded by a network of capillaries. The exchange of gases during respiration takes place across two membranes, the alveolar and capillary membranes. When we are talking of carbon dioxide and oxygen, this is where it happens. Interspace between the squamous cells and other cells that secrete surfactant, a phospholipid fluid which prevents the alveoli from drying out. In addition, surfactant reduces surface tension and prevents alveolar walls collapsing during expiration. So the surfactant reduces tension between these structures and it prevents the collapse of the alveoli during expiration. Secretion of surfactant into the distal air passages and alveoli begins about the 35th week of fetal life. Its presence newborn babies facilitate the expansion of the lungs and establishment of respiration. It may not be present. It may not. It may be. It may not be present in sufficient amounts in the immature lungs of immature babies, causing difficulties in establishing respirations. This is the reason why premature babies they have difficulties in breathing, because they lack surfactant. Functions of respiratory bronchioles and the alveoli. 1. External respiration. Earlier on when we were starting this, I explained what is external respiration. This is exchange of gases by diffusion between the alveoli and the blood. Between the alveoli and blood. So we're talking of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Then another function is defense against microbes. Again, this was well explained when I was beginning the respiratory system. Then warming and humidifying, these were also explained in today's presentation. These were also explained in today's presentation. So next time when we meet, we'll start from the lungs. We'll start from the lungs so that we can finally finish on the respiratory system. So that we can finally finish on the respiratory system. I thank you so much for your attention.